Hey, what's up guys? So, since this is my first video, we should probably talk about what kind of content will be uploaded to this channel. We'll talk about sound, music, DIY gear for your studio. We'll be making a lot of useful experiments and some that will be just for fun. You'll get tips and tricks for making your music creatively and unique. There will be tutorials on DIY gear for your home studio, for your instruments, for your guitars, for your basses, and I'm also gonna do some gear reviews. And all of that is just a basic overview, so subscribe if you'd like to know what's coming next. So let's get right in it. So if you're a guitar player, you probably heard about warming up your tube amp before playing it. But how long should that process take? Should you just turn it on and play it? Should you wait a few seconds, minutes, maybe half an hour before you actually record something? Maybe it will sound better if it's warm than it sounds when it's cold. So some people actually like to leave it on for some time so the tubes warm up and it sounds a bit better. But does a warmer tube amp sound any different to a cold one? Okay, tubes do have a warm-up time, which is usually around 12 seconds, but would an amp sound different if we leave it on for a bit longer? So for this test we won't be just warming up an amp, but the whole gear used in recording a short guitar riff to see if the temperature has any effect on sound at all. I've recorded 2 riffs straight to the eye and then reamped them through actual gear, so that the only variation would be the temperature. At first, the room temperature was 17 degrees Celsius and everything in it, from pedals to an amp to speakers to microphones, was cold and not turned on yet. Then, with everything turned on for about 4 hours, I warmed up the room to 27 degrees. I'm using my own tube preamp through a Lexicon MX300 for some reverb and a PV Classic 5050 power amp. And for the first test, the preamp is on a clean channel with a Bogner Ecstasy Red pedal set to mild crunch and a Diamond Memory Lane Junior for some delay. The cab is loaded with a Celestion Vintage 30 and a Warehouse Guitar Speakers Retro 30 and mic'd up with an SM57 and a Pro RM8, which is a cheap ribbon mic but works great on guitars. And for the room mic I'm using a Lewitt LCT640 TS in stereo mode. So let's hear the comparison. What do you think? Will there be any difference at all? Okay, there seems to be very little difference between those two takes, so let's hear the higher gain version. This one is going through a dirty channel on my preamp and has a Tube Screamer style pedal pushing its front end. Again, those who have sharp ears can probably hear a bit of a difference. The hotter version is a bit more compressed and has less high end, while the cold version has a bit more top end, a bit more lower end, but in a mix this probably wouldn't make any difference. So there really isn't much of a difference if you heat up your gear for just 10 degrees. But how big would the temperature difference have to be in order to make any difference on sound? Now, since I can't cool down or heat up my room that much, we'll focus on just one pedal. This is my DIY pedal that combines a fuzz face type of a circuit and a JFET booster. Why I've chosen this pedal is because it only uses discrete components and has a very simple design, and this will have the best chance to sound different at low and high temperatures. It's made out of 3 silicon bipolar transistors and 3 JFET transistors, and we'll set it up for maximum fuzz and medium gain on the JFET side. The booster is designed so that it can overdrive as well, and we'll use some of that drive in this example. Okay, let's put this thing in a freezer. pedal has been in a freezer for quite some time and has reached about minus 25 degrees Celsius. Now after the first recorded example, I put it in an oven to get it up to 50 degrees, so we have a temperature difference of about 75 degrees. Let's hear if that will make any difference to the sound. Since I want to protect my interface from a frozen pedal, I'm using my own DIY reamp box, which will be featured in the next video, and a DI box just to isolate both sides. So let's listen if 75 degrees can make any difference to the sound at all. So again, nothing major actually changed. If we take a closer look at the waveforms, we can see that the bias of the transistor shifted and the clipping isn't the same anymore. But in a mix, this wouldn't be noticeable at all. So is there any point to this test? Actually yes, since people have gigs in winter where the temperatures could easily drop below 0 degrees Celsius, and then in summer the gear gets left in the sun for hours, so the 50 degrees isn't actually overdoing it. But if that pedal showed that little difference in sound, means that most gear will actually be about the same, except of course anything based around germanium transistors, because those will probably stop working at 50 degrees. But in general, with that little difference, the temperature is probably the last thing we should worry about. Anyway, I just wanted to put a pedal in a freezer. And if you're wondering why you shouldn't put your pedals in a freezer, check out this clip, what happened to the pedal when it was warming up. So if you like this type of content, like this video and subscribe, because there'll be a lot more coming up. Thanks for watching and see you next week.